Greetings to you. My name is Maria Wright, and with my husband Fred we have been involved in ministry to the Aliyah since the 1980s. I grew up in a wonderful Bible-based family. As a young girl, my grandfather would teach me the parables and a wonderful array of Bible stories. In common with many Christians, I knew that there existed a modern-day state of Israel and that Jesus was Jewish. However, I probably never gave it a second thought, all of which was to change dramatically during a time of prayer while at Elim Bible College in the early 1980s. The college was then situated in a beautiful old building surrounded by landscape grounds in Capel, Surrey. We were preparing for a life in pastoral ministry within the movement. We felt at home there and enjoyed good relationships with the leadership and were set to take the unusual step of pioneering a new church. But our future and calling was to be very different. The Lord showed me a strange and deeply disturbing but fascinating picture. Before me was a highly elevated roadway that many people were desperately attempting to clamber upon. They were of all ages, sizes, ethnicity and physical descriptions. Some were blind, some were lame, and some were pregnant. They seemed in the main to be desperate and impoverished and were carrying their scant possessions in their hands. Some were even holding their hearts in their hands and walking bowed over with tears in their eyes. As they were trying to access the road, they were being assisted by people who were offering both physical and practical help. At the end of their journey stood the Lord with his arms outstretched. Shortly afterwards, Fred graduated and became pastor of a church plant. Quite an innovative idea at the time. While we were establishing it, we met with an American missionary. After coffee and conversation, we began a time of prayer together. I felt strangely prompted by the Spirit to share this vision with him, but held back as there seemed no obvious reason to do so. I was not in the least bit confident to share things like this, particularly with other people. However, feeling compelled, I did so with some trepidation. At once he started to weep. My first thought was that in some way I'd either upset or offended him. He proceeded to tell me that others had had similar dreams and visions. The Lord was, and still is, calling Christians to help the Jewish people return to their ancient homeland in fulfillment of the prophetic scriptures, especially Isaiah 49:22. I immediately felt as if a bright spiritual light had been switched on and was illuminating something dynamic and deeply challenging. I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the revelation. He proceeded to share scriptures from the major prophets, and we sat in something like a state of awe and shock. We both knew from that moment that the Lord had spoken to us and that this would be our calling from then on, impossible as it seemed. Following this groundbreaking position, we immediately got in touch with the late Ken Burnett at Prayer for Israel, and in a very short space of time, Shel Sjoberg, and we met Steve Lytle, whose book, Exodus 2, was shedding renewed focus on what we now term Aliyah. It is probably fair to say that from good hearts and enthusiasm for what the Lord had shown us, we almost expected to be immediately involved in full-blown Aliyah, but it was some time before it became a reality. Looking back, maybe that is what was needed then. A lot of Steve's message was about the state of the heart, which sadly got lost in a sense of the excitement of what seemed far in the distant future. But eventually things moved at a breakneck speed, and within no time our church situation changed. We amalgamated with another local fellowship, and there was an immediate focus on Israel. We had soon established a PFI prayer group and had visits from people who were to become leaders of the pro-Aliyah movement, whom we featured at our monthly town-wide prayer meetings. Wonderful evenings were spent in our home with Shel Schoberg, Johannes Faschers, Eliyahu Ben-Haim, David Forbes, Lance Lambert, Gerald Godson and others. Shel asked Fred to do research for him and then speak with him on teaching tours, while David encouraged him to write articles for academic journals as well as books. From that point, it became a reality. The Lord then showed me another vision or dream, whatever you want to call it. And this had a profound effect on my life and that of my family. I remember the Lord showing me that I was walking along in this corridor and with me was someone guiding me. And as we walked along, there were these various doors and I began to push on each door as if to go in, but none of the doors would open. And then there was a door which was slightly ajar, and this was a door that had a cross on it. It was like a ministry to Christians. But then I walked on because the person beside me, who I now believe was the Spirit of the Lord, went to the next door. And I pushed this door and it just swang wide open. And inside there were so many Jewish people in beds, sitting on chairs, dancing. And I saw a member of my family there with them. And I felt that the Spirit that was guiding me said, "This is your room." And for me, that was confirmation that we would always be involved in helping to bring the Jewish people back. That was the calling that the Lord had placed on our lives all those years ago, and it's never changed. And in these days, as things get progressively worse for Jewish people, it's even more important that we continue and in fact that others continue and get involved to help the Jewish people wherever they might be, so that they might return to the land that the Lord has given them. Thank you for listening.